What's your opinion of the state of Israel and its influence and cooperation with the U.S.?
I mean, it has nice weather. So right now we have a big push, like this populationist / isolationist push in the U.S. to just separate from every country. And it's hard when you talk to people, and they ask you like, okay, well, why do we send any money at all to Egypt or to Israel or to Saudi Arabia? And a lot of Americans don't even know how to answer that question. So. Yeah. I mean, like I would say that I am in the United States. I think U.S. influence is good because I'm a U.S. person and I agree with the interests, broadly speaking, of my country.
Oh yeah.
So when I look to the Middle East, I think that like having stalwarts, that represent shared interests with us, like Saudi Arabia or Israel, I think is a good thing. But that has to like fit in to a comprehensive view of what American influence and then allied influence looks like across the world. Otherwise, you'll wind up in a weird area where it looks like, like the people in the United States on the far right and sometimes on the far left will say, oh, we just sent Israel a bunch of money. Like, why do we even do this? This is bullshit. Or, a lot of right-wingers in Israel will say, why do we even accept money from the U.S.? Like, we're just hamstrung. We can't do anything. This is bullshit. And I think that when you're lacking that like larger vision, it becomes hard to understand why anything is happening at all.
And what do you and the current state, do you think is good for the U.S. or do you have
I think the current state is good for, I would say the very narrow vision that Netanyahu, I guess, has for the immediate future of Israel. I think it's probably good. I think Netanyahu knows that Trump is not going to restrain Israel probably in almost any way in terms of at least like the only restraint I would imagine is just don't stir up too much trouble for the U.S. to have to deal with, but otherwise, they're basically free to do with whatever they want, which I think Netanyahu probably enjoys that to some extent, although who's to say what'll happen when the next president, comes in office. I think that I feel like Israel's actions have always been a little bit too short-sighted sometimes if there's not like a third party to kind of like force a little bit of a longer vision on things. And I feel like that's kind of playing out right now in terms of the, whatever that 20-point peace plan thing was.
Yeah. How come?
I feel like Israel, I think, I feel like there's this kind of like collective delusion among the right that at some point they'll wake up and all of the Palestinians will just have kind of like evaporated into the air and are gone. I think it was Rabin that said like, I wish the Gaza Strip would just break off and sink into the sea.
Yeah.
It feels like there's no realistic approach or no like hard desire to say like, okay, we need to come to the table and both sides are probably going to have to make some kind of hard sacrifices to figure out what a future agreement looks like. It's just kicking the can down the road more and more and more until, I don't know, the next terrorist attack or the next, war or whatever else. Yeah. I don't think I think there just has to be like a final status of things that people can point to that there could be like progress built on from that point onwards. Like right now it's still an open question in terms of like what does the final arrangement look like between Israel and Palestine, and until that's settled, it's just a super fertile ground for resentment or extremism or radicalization or whatever else that's going to be built up, I think.
Yeah, the thing that you are referring to the Palestinian state, but there's no such thing currently that is even negotiating. There's no one to talk to, actually.
What I'm saying is that I feel like if Israel really wanted to, tomorrow, Israel could embark on a mission saying, we're going to have this, we will have a final arrangement solved. Whether that means the PA is taking over both territories, you guys are going to hold elections, you're going to have a leader, and we're going to negotiate, or whether it means we're going to invite the UN or the US, like Jimmy Carter did, to come in and mediate. Like, this is going to happen, and we're going to force it to happen, because Israel can, because Israel's a huge power compared to whatever fragmented identity the Palestinians even have at this part of the nation.
Oh, so because of the Israel power, they have
they have the ability to force, if they wanted to, some kind of negotiation on both sides.
They have the responsibility. This is what you're saying.
I mean, I would argue there's probably a more responsibility there, But I would just say even on a practical level, they could. But
this explains a lot of how you see things.
Sure, yeah. But I would say that the pro-Pali view in the West, the pro-Palestinian view in the West is always that like Israel is like this expansionist, imperialistic territory, blah, blah, blah.
Colonialist, yeah.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that, but I would say that Israel is very opportunistic. And if there's an opportunity, then I think that sometimes they'll seize it, which I don't necessarily think is always bad. But I think right now the opportunity has to do with expansion into the West Bank and the more and more kind of like settlements and territories and more power in the region. And that, I think, is coming at the expense of any kind of solution to the Palestinian-Israeli issue, which means it's just going to...
No, I do agree with this, but I want to come back to it in a different angle, if I may. There is this separation in the Republican movement, even if inside the mega movement, perhaps, about the Israel situation. Are you aware of that?
A little bit. I think it's blown up more online because you've got people like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes who are more popular online than they are like in the actual governance world. But it is growing, yeah.
It's not a real...
Not that much, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's online stuff distorts stuff a lot. When you look into Congress, the support for Israel on the left and right is pretty broad. It is very broad, I would say.
What do you mean broad? Like,
as in, like most people in lawmaker bodies, like in Congress, most people support, broadly speaking, like Israel. Yeah.
So this situation on the right that is in media, it's exploding online. Do you think it has nothing to do with real life decisions?
Not yet, but
yeah,
the conservative
it has its
movement,
influence.
It could, especially because once Trump is gone, that's MAGA's done. So who knows? The dominoes could fall completely in one direction. It's possible, yeah. I wouldn't say that like it's nothing. It's not there yet, but yeah, it definitely could boil over into something huge.
And what about their points?
What about it?
Do you have anything to say about the points about the association with Israel and everything like that? That it's too much influence on the U.S., AIPAC, all those things?
It must have been very boring to me. No.
Yeah.
I just think historically, there are reasons why I think the United States and the West, broadly speaking, supported Israel. Ideologically and governmentally and culturally, obviously, Israel fashioned itself as like a Western-style nation, so we immediately kind of relate more on that level. The story of Israel, from the late 1800s, but especially from the independence onwards, is like an inspiring story of like one country fighting everybody else. And then it was the Cold War, and that was like Israel's our ally, and the Soviet Union's backing these other people. So for older people, like it was just a very organic thing. I think that like the neo-Nazi types make a mistake in thinking that Israel was like controlling the country. I actually think a lot of people in Israel made that mistake of assuming, like our Hasbara and our propaganda is so good, and I don't think it is. I think it's really bad.
It's really bad, yeah.
But I think that as time has gone on, my generation and younger, when we think of Israel, we just think of like Israel blowing up Palestinians, like that's it. But when older people think of Israel, they think of Israel fighting against the combined front of like Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon, and like all the other Arabs are fighting and trying to kill them and everything. So I think that as time goes on, unless something changes significantly, it wouldn't surprise me if, as my generation ages 10, 20, 30 years, the support for Israel just kind of drops because more people are like, I don't really know why we care, what we're doing.
Yeah, I really appreciate you even acknowledging the two sides of the way to see it. But I want to remain on the way that you said yourself and the younger people are seeing Israel. Can you please elaborate even more? Because I
just because it seems like from the perspective of somebody in the United States who's my age or younger, you don't really see Israel just seems like an unstoppable power in the Middle East. Even in Israel, at least when I was there a year and a half ago, I constantly heard this. The Elon Levy guy would say this over and over again, like the seven fronts. We're at 7 fronts of war, and it's like a year later, it's like, okay, well, Nasrallah is dead. Every single Palestinian, or not Palestinian, all the Hamas leadership is dead. We're bombing Qatar. We're bombing, embassies in Lebanon. We're like everybody's getting blown up. Okay, you've got B-52s from the United States blowing up Iran, and even when Iran is trying to like bomb Israel, you've got like Saudi Arabia and Jordan are like intercepting missiles, and it's hard when I look at all this and like Israel's like, really, we're about to be destroyed, I promise. And it's like, okay, well, you guys just like annihilated your fifth enemy. Netanyahu's had like more military victories in the past year and a half than like, So it's just hard in the West when we look at it. It's like, okay, well, you guys seem like you're an unstoppable power, but then if that's the case, and then you have like all the Palestinian people who are living here, it just looks bad, like where's this? I don't think you're ever going to get sympathy from my generation or younger for Israel. There has to be something else that powers that support for Israel.
Can you please elaborate even more? It's fascinating to me.
Sure.
You said before that it's like because of the power, we have a moral obligation.
Yeah, I think people always view the larger, more powerful country as the one that has to show more restraint, or the one that has to force peaceful agreements onto their enemies, basically.
Yeah, but you're talking about it like as if the World War II, like you've had the power nations, the powerful allies, and they needed to be morally superior then, which is
Well, not as much because I think that was viewed as more of like an equal, like a war. That was a big. There were like two sides that had the ability to destroy each other. Is how it was. So it was viewed, I think, as like an equal fight. You know.
And this is because of the too much of a difference in power. It seems like unequal, and because of that, it seems bad.
Because I think in Israel, I think Israelis view it as kind of like Jews versus Arabs or Muslims, or Israel versus like this kind of like unified Arab Muslim
front.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Perhaps, yeah.
But in the United States, looking at it, it's like, okay, well, we're friends with all the Gulf states. Jordan and Egypt are all peaceful with you. The Assad regime is gone. Hezbollah can't use any phones for 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but isn't it because of the way we saw it?
Like a little bit, but I think it's also because I would say the threat was a little bit over exaggerated. Like I think that they're maybe not like on the Arab street, but I think the Arab leadership, I think, appreciates Israel and probably wants to continue that. Like I think if you were to ask, like MBS, if you were to ask Saudi Arabia, if you were to ask Jordan, or if you ask like, hey, who do you guys like more? Of
course.
Khamenei or whatever, the Ayatollah or whatever, or do you like Israeli leaders? It's like, we'll go with Israel,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people in that region like to see Israel there. So it's hard when in the U.S., let me put it this way. In the U.S., we viewed it, although now because half these countries have gotten blown up, as like you have this Iran, Iraq, Syria axis. And then you have your kind of like your Gulf states and Israel, right? And these are the two sides. But then Israel is down here and they're like, well, actually, all of them want to kill us, we promise. That's what it feels like, I guess, when we look at it, yeah. But I'm saying that when you look at this over time, it's like, it's not about, like, I'm sympathetic to the Israeli perspective, but from your guys' perspective, you have to be sympathetic towards U.S. perspective if you want the U.S. support, right? One thing that, I don't know how or why this happened, it was because of the Soviet Union, but Palestinians have learned the language of the West so well, and for whatever reason, Israelis just haven't. Like one thing I point out to Israelis when I have this conversation, like do you know what the best propaganda that was made for Israel for like the whole October 7th attack? Do you know who made it, or do you know what it was? Or
the Hamas footage.
Yeah, it was the girl in the back of the truck, and that was Hamas footage. Yeah. But like, if they hadn't released their own crazy fucking footage, like you guys put together a whole video. It's like 47 minutes. You haven't even shown it to the public yet, right? I don't know if you ever will. There was the video that was put together that was shown to members of the Knesset and some members of the media and press. Or like, for Palestinians, when a bomb goes off, like they're running around looking for, headless babies to shake in front of a camera. And for you guys, it's Zaka is running around trying to bury people as quickly as possible. And there's just a difference in terms of like communicating to the West. And I'm not trying to say that one is necessarily like morally superior or inferior. Like, I'm just saying that in terms of like when the Palestinians are doing things, they're maximizing every single action for we want the West to like us, I remember watching the kid with the sling or whatever, and the guy's got the video camera, and you see the kid slinging the rock, and he gets shot, and there's like 4 medical guys like right here, and it's like this is all like clearly like part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then but then on the Israeli side, there's none of that. So I think that if you want to win support from other countries, you have to figure out like what does this country care about, and then market accordingly. That sounds very cold, but
it is. The thing is, I think in what you're saying is that Sinwar was just a genius in this matter. He studied this for years, and he did this just. I want to go to a different issue, if I may, because. Just going back to America and the thing about the support for Trump or not, Trump gone to office this term, saying he will end all wars. We do see some, movement to the right direction, perhaps. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just what do you say about that? Because he has many hate from the right about not able to do this.
Yeah, no, I think that from the U.S. perspective, things are more at like a boiling point than they ever have been before. We're like on the precipice of war with Venezuela right now. We've offered like a $50 million bounty for Maduro. We haven't been able to do anything with Ukraine, Russia. Despite what Trump or Netanyahu would say the U.S. had nothing to do with the end of the war between Israel and Gaza. I think that Netanyahu he achieved all his objectives, and the war was going to end at some point. I think that there are all these other like micro conflicts that are going on that he's saying like he solved some huge thing. We literally renamed our Department of Defense the Department of War, and now we've got our relationship with every ally around the planet is more strained than ever. Where you've got Macron, you've got France, and the UN. Or not the UN, I'm sorry, the European Union are like talking about how we need to do military stuff maybe on our own because we don't even know if the US is going to help with anything.
So maybe to answer it even better, can you please say what's the biggest threat to America right now in your
ourselves, unfortunately, which is the saddest thing because I think that coming into my biggest concern, how naive am I, my biggest annoyance when Trump won the election was there's this pattern where Republicans are in office and things get really messed up, and then the Democrat has to come in and then has to fix things, and then a Republican gets reelected next time, and it's like, man, fuck you. And that kind of happened again. We saw that when Bush left in 2008, there was this huge global financial crisis, right? That was driven a lot by our housing markets in dumb ways, financial ways. And then Obama has to come in, and then after 8 years, like everything has started to turn around and it's getting better. And then Trump's elected, and then it's kind of crazy, but the economy started growing, and then COVID hits, and his management of COVID is just whatever. Biden comes in, and then stuff is kind of getting better, and then the Ukraine-Russia war hits, and stuff gets weird because of influence on global markets and everything else. But then stuff is like kind of getting better, and then Trump gets elected, and everything's getting like screwed up again. And this like pattern of like things were starting to get better, and now Republicans back in to mess everything up again. Like this back and forth is very, very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
What was the question that you asked me for the beginning of this?
Because the biggest threat, you said it was yourself.
The annoying thing is that I thought that when Trump would come in, I thought Trump would just do nothing and take credit for everything Biden did, and that would be his big win, because it's kind of what happened at the end of Obama. Like the economy is growing a ton after Obama, after it cratered, after the global financial crisis and started growing again, the economy is doing really well. But instead, the United States has just embarked on this path of self-destruction for no reason whatsoever. I think we were set up in a really good position post-COVID and everything else. We recovered pretty stronger than every other OECD country. We were doing really well on a lot of different indicators, but for some reason Americans are like always the victim. We think that every country's taking advantage of us. We think we're the weakest consumers. We think our lives are horrible and suck, and everything is terrible and unaffordable and crazy. And
this is crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But
so right now we've embarked on this self-destructive path for no reason. So when you say what is the greatest threat to America, I don't know. Arguably China. But we can't even. That's such a far. Like we're fighting with Canada and Mexico right now. So I don't even know how you can think about China. Or I would say stuff like I think Russia and the invasion of Ukraine I think represents a lot of potential instability in Europe and questions about European security. But we don't even. I don't know how we can even look at any of that. We're trying to like start wars in South America right now for some reason. So,
But please elaborate on the self-destructiveness that you are referring to.
Well, it feels like because Americans imagined like enemies in all corners, we just started cutting ourselves to, I don't know.
How physically? Can you please show it to me as an outsider?
So like what were the policies that we did? Or
no, how come you are saying that your biggest threat is self-destruction, right?
Mm-hmm. So for instance, like we had trade agreements all over the world because that's what we do. We're a trading country. It's very important to us. We blew all of those up with the tariffs. Trump came out and he announced tariffs on every single country on the planet, including countries that we had massive formal trade agreements with. Like the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement was literally Trump's upgrade from NAFTA, and he blew that up. So our trade relationships with everybody has been severely threatened. So our export markets have been hurt. Our imports are down. So our ability to manufacture are down.
It sounds like you're saying that Trump is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
But
I mean, Trump's just one guy. He got elected. He got supported. So Americans are,
Oh, so you're saying the people who are electing Trump.
This idea that we think that everything is horrible, so we're being even more self-destructive is our greatest threat.
The vacuum in place for the Make America Great Again narrative fits.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what's your opinion on Donald Trump as a president?
I say pretty horrible.
Yeah, and why?
I feel like he's a very narcissistic person. I don't think he very much cares about the country.
כבר נחזור לפרק, אני רוצה קודם כל להגיד תודה לספונסר של היום, CyberGhost VPN.
VPN זה למעשה כלי שנותן לכם להחליף את ה-IP, ובעצם האינטרנט חושב שאתם ממדינה אחרת. ברגע שאתם על וי-פיי ציבורי בבית קפה או בשדה תעופה, אתם חשופים. עם סייבר גוסט, כל הגלישה שלכם מוצפנת וזה סוגר את החור הזה. סייבר גוסט יש 38 מיליון משתמשים, וכל מנוי יכול לשמש עד 7 מכשירים שונים, כך שאתם יכולים כל המשפחה ליהנות מאותו מנוי. יש לינק בתיאור של הפרק ויש ברקוד על גבי המסך לדיל שלהם, שהוא בעצם $2 לחודש ו-45 יום ניסיון, שבמהלכם אתם יכולים לבטל ולקבל את כל הכסף בחזרה. תודה רבה לסייבר גוסט, וכעת נחזור לפרק.
He doesn't even care about his own political party. I don't think he really cares much about the leadership that he leaves behind him. I think that everything he does is done kind of to satisfy his own personal narcissistic personality traits or his own ego. I mean, from a policy perspective, it's hard to even say it's bad. It's just like contradictory at times. He's got terrorists that are coming and going. He wants to do more with ICE, but he can't coordinate with any of the states. He wants to crack down on crime, but he is just sending the National Guard to places that doesn't even have the ability to arrest. Just everything is like an incoherent mess right now. And I think it seems like the Republican Party is kind of in disarray at the moment as a result of all the lunacy. So, yeah.
It's not one huge thing, like we are going into a fascist country, but it is anecdotal. You're saying he's failing in specific things.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, our constitution and the way that the government is structured makes it hard to fully fall into like a one-party authoritarian rule. But I mean, Trump would do it if he could. But he's very incompetent as well, which I guess is lucky for the people that don't like him.
Elaborate, please, for me, because I'm not from here. And I need to understand because I truly don't. What do you see is the downhill end game of going into an authoritarian fascist regime or something like that?
Like what? Like how would we get there? What's the bad part of it?
Yeah, no. How would you get there? But by
so I would argue that him bullying different parts of the media to do what he wants, I think, is really indicative of kind of like a top-down, kind of a top-down approach to how messaging should be. So, for instance, if people aren't calling it the Gulf of America, because he tried to rename the Gulf of Mexico, like he'll kick people out of the White House press pool, or he tries to sue people who say things that he doesn't like. He's already sued, half a dozen media stations for different reasons. He sued almost all the social media companies when they banned his accounts in 2020. He's just, he'll attack any part of the media that's not on message with him in order to try to get everybody to say positive things about him. He uses an ungodly amount of political and social power to try to bend people to his will. So if somebody in the party disagrees with him, he'll do everything he can to kind of destroy that person. Pointing back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, even she was complaining that this is the first time she's gotten like a slew of death threats and everything else as Trump has started to fight with her. You've seen like the weaponization of the Department of Justice, which is like the legal part of the government, more than you ever have in the history of the United States, where Donald Trump is telling Pam Bondi to go after political opponents from his last presidential term.
So you say it's between inside the Republican Party, which is something that should be concerning in regards to communist or fascist regimes, but it's also silencing opponents.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I would say there's two ways, I guess. I don't like the term fascism because it's very loaded and everybody has their own thoughts about it, but there's like horizontal and there's vertical stuff. So when I think of like horizontal, I think of like single party. Like Donald Trump, the fact that he tried to label or I think he has labeled like Antifa as like a domestic terrorist organization. Like we don't have Antifa in the United States. They were like, we kind of saw some Antifa protests like 2016, but since then it's kind of like a joke. Like people like me are, like, where is Antifa? I don't know where they're at. There are no protests this year. There's been larger center left ones, but largely Antifa is just not like a real thing in the US. So when Donald Trump constantly refers to we have two parties in the United States, when he constantly refers to the other party as all being radical, as all being crazy, as all being communist, as all being fascist, as all being Antifa, that's a weird horizontal attack. When it comes to verticality, I'm thinking of like integrating, like when he's using the Department of Justice to attack people that he doesn't like in the media, when he's constantly making appearances on friendly media, when he's constantly trying to like appoint his own media, it's like using Truth Social all the time for his messaging is very strange. There's a lot of weird stuff that gets advertised on there. He messages a lot on there. There's a lot of government people that only find out about a thing because some government department tweeted about it. I think that this type of like centralization of power and influence and control, I think is very unhealthy. And even within the government itself, Trump largely neglects the Congress. He doesn't really know how legislation works. And even members of Congress are complaining where it's like, we don't do anything because Trump just wants to do everything in the executive branch of the government.
Yeah. So If I may, I heard you say, and it's implying in your answers right now that you believe that he would, if he could, he would run for another term. Like this is not, and you truly believe this is might happen in the end of this term.
I don't think it will, but only because he's so old. If he was younger or healthier, he absolutely 100% would. Absolutely.
Do you truly believe it?
100%, yeah.
And you explain it by his characteristic traits?
Because the conservative movement in this country has a capacity to support anything beyond what our wildest imagination was 10, 15 years ago. The President of the United States a few days ago, this is on the back of, for months, conservatives have been crying about death threats and everything else in the United States. For the President a few days ago to be saying that, we could execute congressmen because of a video they made saying that the military shouldn't follow unlawful orders is just... Yeah. All of it is beyond the pale. And there seems to be no breaks anywhere in the Republican Party or in the conservative movement.
And what do you subject it to?
I think the conservative movement in the United States has been building in this direction for decades. I think you saw hints of it with the obsession with Bill Clinton, with the multi-year Ken Starr investigation until he finally found the Monica Lewinsky stuff. I think you saw it when the election was stolen from Al Gore, when he was denied a recount for an election that was within like 150 votes in the state of Florida. I think you saw it when McConnell stole from the Democrats and Barack Obama the Supreme Court Justice nomination that he was constitutionally due. And then I think you've seen it on the media side of things, where you've had your bombastic figures like your Rush Limbaughs and your Glenn Becks and the crazy conspiracy boards and your Michael Savages and your Ann Coulters. And when you look at their... I don't know if this perception exists outside of the United States, but in the United States, the meme is like when you're listening to conservative media, it's like some guy on the radio screaming and preaching and shouting. And then you have NPR, welcome to liberal media news. And it's like they're very, very different.
It's actually, it looks quite the opposite from the outside. It looks like there's this two very loud voices that are trying to blame the other side for being this or another.
Yeah, that appearance happens. So there's a very weird phenomenon, and there's a whole it's a whole other thing. But like what's happened is when you look at the United States from the outside, you seem to have this like far right. So your Donald Trumps and your whole MAGA movement, everything, and then you have this far left, like kind of your maybe the college radical people, the communists, socialists, whatever. The difference though is that once we leave the world of social media and then we look at, say, our Congress, the far right MAGA, that's 99% of the lawmakers in Congress. And then like the socialists and communists, there are maybe one or two, maybe.
But aren't they like in charge of every institutional, governmental? No,
not at all.
Like the media, perhaps? No.
The Conservative Party has cried about this for a long time. They've said it, but like I've joked about this, for so long. Like, well, where are they? Because people would say, so for instance, for Ukraine, I'm a big supporter of Ukraine. We have supposedly the military-industrial complex that wants to just sell weapons and do wars everywhere. Well, where are they? Why aren't we supporting Ukraine more? I don't know where they went. Or when people talk about how we're in control of all the media and everything, Fox News had a massive lawsuit where it was revealed that they were lying on behalf of the president and his campaign about Dominion voting systems. They ended up settling for a larger dollar amount that has ever been publicly disclosed in all of corporate history for almost $800 million.
But BBC, like an NBC and all the traditional networks seem to be all on the same side.
Yeah, they seem to be, but they're not.
They're not.
They are, but you have people like Fox News who will shamelessly and with no spine carry whatever message the president tells them to carry. And then you have your left-leaning news stations like CNN and MSNBC and NBC. But like when you listen to them, they try very hard because they're so mind-warped from the right. They try very hard to seem impartial. Like they don't want to be accused of being biased or having Trump derangement syndrome. So they try really hard to be fair to both sides. Meanwhile, on the right, there's no pretense of caring.
But what about, and I'm sorry to take the discussion to this this location, but Jimmy Kimmel crying on air and Stephen Colbert. How about these influential people on these networks? It seems like there's the same narrative.
Yeah, kind of. But I would argue that those people they're not far left. They don't push far left at all. What Jimmy Kimmel initially got kicked off the air for was absolutely true. His statement was true that when Charlie Kirk got shot, MAGA was doing everything they could to make this guy not seem like one of their own. That's what Jimmy Kimmel said. He didn't say the shooter was MAGA. The shooter was... Now, I can understand, maybe you could hear that and maybe think that was what he was implying, but no, the reality is right after Charlie Kirk got shot, people like Kash Patel, people like Donald Trump, politicians like Nancy Mace were literally saying it was a trans-Tifa radical leftist shooter before we knew anything at all about the shooter.
This is what the current news for me. This is what I know to be true. Am I incorrect?
For what?
For what you just said, the Trump, like he was an Antifa trans.
So there's no. So first of all, they made all these statements before any information had been released.
Oh,
so that already makes things hard because now it's like, well, if you found out anything otherwise, would we even know? Because so we're already like tainted the investigation like crazy, at least insofar as the public knows. Because if you've already made these statements before we know anything, well, now I don't know.
Okay,
number one, but then number two, in terms of the person being radicalized or having a radical political identity, we don't really know any of that yet. And the fact that nothing has come out or nobody said anything makes me feel like he probably wasn't radicalized in that way, because if he was, I think we would have heard about it.
But it seemed different than what you're explaining them to be. In my perspective, Trump is doing just extraordinary things.
In what way? I feel like we've lost in power in every measurable way. Like, what's one way we've gained?
Economy.
Our economy. So we had like 10% devaluation of our currency last year. Our debt is growing more than it was supposed to. They had their whole Doge cuts and everything else. They didn't cut anything from the debt or deficit. The tariffs are wreaking havoc on our economy. The administration, for the first time in years, decided not to even publish last month's job numbers. They said they lost them. We have huge pressure on our central bank to try to lower interest rates because the economy is like heading in a really horrible direction. Like, I don't know where that's, I understand that might be the perception that Trump tries to sell, but it's not. Like,
I'm trying to say that he succeeds.
Yeah, what? I guess he sells the message, but I mean, domestically, there's a reason why his support is finally starting to hollow out. Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you explain it?
I mean, I think you can only live in delusion for so long. At some point, every time you tell a lie, you incur a debt to the truth, and at some point, you have to, make that even again.
So you think the public are starting to see through his lies?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's again, you can only lie for so much. Like the affordability hasn't gone up. Like people aren't being helped in the material ways that they thought they would be. It's like scandal after scandal after scandal is happening. We're hitting, when we get to the next month or two, we're going to have our healthcare premiums are going to skyrocket because the Republican Congress decided not to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. It's just going to be one thing after another. And we were promised like win after win after win after win, but I think people see it's just a bunch of showmanship. Like nothing is really happening. It's him, sending the National Guard to place and saying, "I fixed all the crime," and it's like, this is nonsense.
Yeah, I see what you're getting to, but I still want to stay on mega because I want to understand how you view them. Let's leave the policy for a little bit later. Just what are you thinking about Trump supporters and the mega movement?
It's hard not to get hateful because of what I see on social media. The reality is those people probably represent just a sliver of the actual voting population. I think in America, I think we kind of take for granted our right to vote for leadership. I don't think people care about it too much or think about it too much. So when you go and vote, it's just kind of like a whatever thing. If you're like a little bit unhappy with current circumstances, you might vote for the guy with the sledgehammer who's promising to destroy everything, which is what Trump was. And that's, I guess I try to hold that view of the MAGA movement. It's just a bunch of people who just don't think very much about politics or don't follow the news very much or are like easily brainwashed by what they see on social media. And so they have kind of like fallen into voting for a certain person or in a certain direction because there's so many different forces in the media right now telling them to do so. The Joe Rogans, all these weird podcasts, all the political messaging from the conservative movement that,
Which are
what?
What are the messages that you are referring to?
Just, I mean, it could be anything about anything. It could be the idea that like that the left wants to like make everybody trans. It could be that like all the new vaccines are going to kill you and your children, and we're giving too many of them, and that COVID was a conspiracy that was created to kill everybody on the planet besides Chinese people and Jews. Or it could be
you're talking about anything that like makes you doubt authority.
Yeah, basically, yeah. The Department of Education controls all the state curriculums for how they teach kids. They don't like just it's thing after thing after thing to undermine every single part of the government. Yeah.
It is sales. It is a narrative that works if you want to gain traction, especially online. But I want to explore this a little bit further in your mind, if I may, because you are referring to them. I heard you in Jubilee saying they were cult. I just want to understand it a little bit more. And I don't want you to get hateful.
Try not to.
Yeah.
The conservative movement supposedly stood for a whole bunch of things, principally, but none of those things seem to matter when it comes to Trump. He can just go any direction on anything and they'll follow. And nothing screams cult to me more than a group of people who are epistemically shuttered from the outside world. They have no other sources of truth besides whatever Trump tells them is true. And they will completely take a 90-degree curve off from anything they believed before. I think the best example of this, as of recent, was kind of like the whole Epstein file thing, that coming into this administration, like people from Trump's like cabinet or the inferior cabinet people, your Dan Bongino's or whatever, your Kash Patels were on these podcasts saying like, we know all the Epstein files are here, we're going to find him. And then Pam Bondi is like, in the Southern District of New York, we found a whole stash of new Epstein files and here's part 1. And then all of a sudden it's like, who's talking about Epstein? Why do you guys even care about that? How stupid. And to see so many people like, oh yeah, true, that is dumb. Who cares? It's like, really? Like, that's insane to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. And so the main thing is that they are being led by a figure, no matter what the direction is. Mm-hmm. It's a figure worshipping cult, in your opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that. I don't want to say that I agree, but I do see what you're saying. And I wanted to understand...
Wait, I'm curious. Why don't you agree?
Why don't you? I agree.
Yeah. Or what do you think is the biggest part that...
there's a difference between the mega movement and Trump supporters, but there is like the conservative Republican, half of the nation perhaps, who voted for him. And this is where I'm a bit confused when labeling, because I don't want to label and I don't want to include groups together which are not necessarily entangled.
Okay.
So I think there are perhaps this type of movement that you are referring to. From the outside, I need to only trust your examination of the reality. And
I think, okay, I'm slightly sympathetic towards that. I would say that the issue you run into is if I have 100 people that are standing around outside and I've got like 3 of them that are really, really, really bad, and then I've got like 20 of them who are kind of willing to go along with it, and then the other 80 are like, just we'll stand by and whatever.
Yeah.
I have a problem with 100 people. It's not like all of them that are doing the horrible thing, but when enough of them are kind of willing to help and then the rest of them are kind of willing to just be along for the ride, I think that's a really big problem.
But I'm more concerned for your country.
I am as well, yeah.
Now, I'm more concerned about the polarization, which is just because, social media and everything, making the loud voices go louder. And I see what you're saying, but referring to half of the country as, a problem, this seems like the wrong direction to me. But
I think you have to identify a problem before you can fix it. And I think that for a long time, Americans have kind of tried to pretend that the problem isn't there, but there is one and we need to address it. When Trump is gone, if we don't do anything to rectify, what's happened, we're just going to wind up in the same place again. Did you see the debate between Biden and Trump?
Yeah, of course.
So that was a thing that could only happen on the Democratic side, where Biden had a very bad performance. There was a lot of concern about him being a leader for the Democratic Party going into the next nominations, and Obama and Nancy Pelosi, and then kind of like the left-leaning media, all of them were like, I don't know if this is good. Biden had to step back. If that same thing happened on the other side, nothing would happen. Donald Trump has lied about his health. We've seen his massive fucking exploded ankles. We know that he got an MRI a while ago. We don't know what it was for. We've seen him sitting, like this for hours, but we don't know if he's having microstrokes or not. No, or transient ischemic strokes. They've lied about so much, and nobody around him can call him out because and it's not even conspiracy theorist, but because Trump is so thoughtless and narcissistic, he doesn't have a strong like ideology. So there are other men around him that are filling him with their ideologies. So people like Stephen Miller, people like J.D. Vance. It's a huge fight right now relating to different factions in the White House fighting over what the peace plan would look like between Russia and Ukraine. So I'm just saying that like on the Republican side, they have no ability to be self-critical or audit themselves. Trump will never, writ large, with the entire Republican Party be like, oh guys, this isn't working. We need a new leader. Like on the Democratic side, like what happened with Biden. That's my issue, is there's no pause for self-reflection. Just as one more example of that, I don't know how much of the American media you follow, but after Democrats lost this last year, there were a million different shows. I've been on a million different panels where it's like, what did we do wrong? How do we appeal more to the right? How do we appeal more to moderates? What do we have to do to change our messaging? In 2020, when Trump lost, the Republicans said, we didn't lose. They rigged the election. We're secretly the most popular ever. We're going to take everything we said in 2020. We're going to say the same thing even louder in 2024. They made no changes.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the two sides. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. And it's really, in my country, it has a similar problem.
Sure.
But aren't you scared of a civil war? You had one.
I think that there's a very sad thing to say, but there are scarier things than civil wars. Like the total annihilation of one side is worse than two sides fighting and then coming back together. Oh, like this country did survive one civil war.
Just can you clarify annihilation of a side? What?
So as in like the Civil War, we had a civil war, right? We survived it and then we came back together. I think that is as tragic and horrible as that was, is better than us having two separate countries or one country that just destroyed the other country.
Really similar to China, absolutely, and Russia, of course. And I see what this is frightening.
A little bit. At least for, this sounds so sad to say, but at least for China and Russia, like I would say that Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, these are men from just, I'm not as studied into these people, but they seem to me as men of ideas or ideologies. Oh. They have a design. Even if I disagree with it, they have designs.
Yeah, but Xi Jinping just announced himself the emperor for life.
Sure, but he has an idea and a design for China. Putin has an idea or a design for China. Or I'm sorry, for Russia.
Yeah, but would you put Stalin on the same?
Yeah, he has a design. He has an idea. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying he's not just thinking of himself. He's thinking of like Mother Russia.
I don't know what's worse.
Well, if
he did kill, millions of
not good. Yeah, I'm like, listen, I'm a hardcore capitalist. I agree. Yeah. But when I look at Donald Trump, I would like. These are very extreme statements, but like, if I had like a Hitler as like a leader, at least he cares about like my country, kind of, right? Donald Trump doesn't care about his country. He only cares about himself. That's the scary thing.
You really think that?
Yes, he only cares about himself because Trump doesn't do anything that's for the good of the party or for the good of the country. He'll easily throw all of these things under the bus if it benefits him, which I think makes him much scarier. Like sometimes you can say like, I disagree a lot, and maybe we'll get to it with the direction that Netanyahu has taken everything. But if I was an Israeli, even if I disagreed with him, I don't think Netanyahu is like trying to necessarily, not intentionally, destroy my country.
This is what people are thinking in Israel.
Sure, I'm sure there are on the left. I'm sure there are people that think that. But in a true sense, in the United States, like if there was somebody like even like a J.D. Vance or somebody that was the head of the U.S., I disagree with them ideologically. I don't like the directions they go, but they have a design for America and they see it someplace in the world and they're trying to further that. Donald Trump has none of that.
Can I please challenge you? Yeah. Because I believe a person of ideology on this side would be Charlie Kirk.
Sure.
Would you agree? Because he was.
I would take a Charlie Kirk president a million times over Donald Trump.
Okay,
I hate Charlie Kirk. I hated him, Charlie Kirk. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't agree with him at all.
But you respect his ideology.
He's a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Donald Trump's not a leader. He's a child.
Okay, so please, let's go to this direction for a little bit because he died. Isn't the bullets were like they said fascists on him and stuff like that?
Yeah. So there were 4 different bullets. And every bullet had like a pop culture reference on it, I think. So like I think one of the bullets was like, take this fascist, I think is what the bullet said. So one, that wasn't the bullet that was shot at him, but also 2, it's a reference to a game. Have you ever heard of a game called Helldivers?
No.
Oh, it's like it's a popular video game.
Okay.
And I think every bullet had like a reference to some video game.
So he didn't die as a fascist, like in the opinion of the shooter.
I don't know. I can't say that I know that, but I know there hasn't been any good evidence presented of it. So like when we saw the text between him and his, I think trans girlfriend, I think the girlfriend just seemed shocked. They didn't seem like they were like, oh, good job, you got him, you killed him. And then all of the Discord logs that have leaked in his room and the history we've seen of them chatting, nothing really seems like crazy radical or anything. In the United States, several months ago, there was this is a big one, conservatives love this one, there was a trans shooter that went to a church and shot it up. Yeah. Did you see anything about this shooter? That person was crazy radical. They had like a whole diary journal thing, that tons of writing. They had a video that they took of all their guns. This person was an insane radical. The Tyler Robinson guy, he seems aggressively normal, like very normal, which is very weird. Yeah. And so we just don't have any information about it yet.
So what do you make of this assassination?
I have no idea. I think it's incredibly weird.
Like conceptually.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. The thing is that like for extraordinary events, there's probably always going to be something weird, like because weird things happen sometimes. But it is weird reading like his Discord messages. Everything seems very normal. Like I think even when he wrote in his Discord, when he said like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, like this was me, I was the shooter," like even the Discord reaction seemed pretty normal. Like I think if something like that broke out in my Discord, it would be crazier. I think people would be saying crazier things, and like everything about his life just seemed like very, very, very normal to me. Yeah.
As a concept, when history will judge this murder, how do you think it will be judged as? What is place in history?
I mean, it's an assassination, right? It's inconceivable to think that it wasn't somewhat politically driven.
Yeah,
like it must be. Yeah, but then the problem is it's hard to say like where did it come from, or like what was the shooter's, like what was happening, I guess, in the shooter's mind. Like when people look at these situations, they're very quick to like label stuff in the way that they want it, because especially on the right, they're obsessed with like Jimmy Kimmel said, they'll do anything to say he's not one of their own. But there are like a few like very plausible pathways where the guy was right wing. So like in the state of Utah, there's a lot of Mormons, a lot of people who are like closeted gays, a lot of people who are very resentful about being closeted gays. It could be that the guy hated the fact that Charlie Kirk was, super evangelical and interpreted him as being anti-gay, and that's why he wanted to kill him. He could have been conservative otherwise. Maybe. He could have been like a radicalized, far left person who really wanted to kill Charlie Kirk. But these people seem to write and leave such a bigger trail of like radical writings online. So it would be weird that he would do that shooting and then not say anything about it.
Yeah, but aren't you afraid of the direction of being so much influenced by social media that you can make such an act?
Yeah, I think it's bad. Yeah, but I don't know yet what he was influenced by, so it's hard to say.
You don't blame the political climate.
Yeah, I think the political climate is really bad. I do to some extent. Yeah, for sure. But it sucks because the people on the right won't do anything to bring it down. Like after the shooting of Charlie Kirk, every single left-leaning leader, Obama, Biden, politicians, people in the media, all of them were like, there needs to be less shooting. It's not good. Less killing is not good. After the attempted assassination of Trump, Biden, he increased the Secret Service available for him. He came out and said, we shouldn't ever be engaged in political violence in the United States. After the Charlie Kirk shooting, Donald Trump was saying things like, when the left does violence, it's horrible, and when the right does violence, just because we're upset about how crazy the left is. And he refuses to say like all of us need to be less violent. He just keeps blaming one side, and they do this over and over and over again. And it's like, Jesus.
Yeah, this was your take on Piers Morgan. You've been attacked because of that.
Yeah.
Can you explain the view of the other side to this message of yours?
This is the bare minimum moral threshold for a human being, let alone a leader, let alone the president. You should be able to come out and say, all of us need to be not violent. There's no reason for anybody to be killing each other in the United States over political disagreements.
But why was this, when you're saying this, got a lot of attack?
Because I said that on the left, we should stop saying that until the president leads on that. Because what's happening is every single time a violent event happens, everybody on the left says, this is horrible, we need it to stop. And then everybody on the right goes, that's right, you guys are horrible, stop killing everybody. And it's like, what? Like there's no accountability. Like every time they start talking about like political shootings and political assassinations, they conveniently leave out all of the violence that's happening on their side, of which most people would say there have been more political assassinations from the right to the left, but they just don't acknowledge any of it. They don't talk about any of it. When it ends up being one of their own, they forget about it immediately, and they just want to fixate or focus on a left-leaning shooter. And then what happens is it's just driving up the radicalization more and more. And then earlier you said a thing where you were like, aren't there far left people and far right people? Kind of, but like in the actual congressional bodies for leadership, none of those people are that far left. In the U.S., the far left hates those people. The far left in the United States hates all the Democrats in Congress. They hate Chuck Schumer. They hate Hakeem Jeffries. A lot of them even attack like AOC and Bernie Sanders now. But the Republicans are like, oh no, it's the far left who are the leaders. It's like, yeah, no.
Can you please define for me the far left and the far right in your eyes?
I mean, it's kind of a word game. I would argue that like the MAGA movement has gone off the rails. That whole movement is like extremist. But if you define like far as in like far on the political spectrum compared to everybody, I mean, technically they're just the right-wing party right now. But I mean, I would argue that all of them, it's a crazy party that has a whole bunch of issues with it. I would say that you have like your center left, which is like all of the Democratic Party in the United States, like all of your lawmakers, your leadership and everything else. And then you have like your far left, and these are like your weird like socialist communists, like very online types, but they don't try to win elections. They don't care about political power. They just like to be on social media and they like to scream at people all day. They'll never influence anything politically in terms of like policies that the United States takes.
So you're not afraid of the far left? Yeah,
Is this mine?
Yeah, this is yours. You're not afraid of the far left, of the left going too far?
The only thing that scares me about the far left is they just attack the center left all the time. But they don't have any political power, no. Like these people have been protesting and screaming in the United States for 15 years and they have nothing to show for it. They have no elected leaders. None of their That's why they were all so happy about Mamdani, who's not even as far left as they want them to be. But there's like the mayor of New York City, like these people are, they have nothing to show for their decade and a half of screaming into the wind.
Is not Zohar Mamdani, is he not far left?
I mean, like he kind of is, but it's the mayor of New York City. This is a very blue. It's a very blue city, And to have 15 years of screaming and screeching, you would have expected they would have. Like, if you were an outsider looking at the United States, I feel like you'd expect, okay, these far left guys must be like half their parliament, half their Congress, or something. It's like they have nothing. Maybe one person, maybe Ilhan Omar or whatever, maybe.
And when you refer to the entire mega movement as those who are in power right now, what are you afraid of the far right going? In what direction? Is it physical violence?
The weaponization of the Department of Justice has just been abysmal. So Donald Trump just like literally issuing like false charges to people that he doesn't like, using prosecutors that he wasn't allowed to appoint, is a travesty. It's unbelievable. The Letitia James and the Comey stuff that just got dropped because Lindsay Halligan she shouldn't even be there.
Under what bucket do you put all of those things?
What do you mean by bucket?
What is the thing that is scary about the thing that you're saying?
The idea that if the president doesn't like you enough, that he could start having you arrested for no reason. After the Charlie Kirk thing, obviously I was making the rounds a lot of shows, making statements, and the Minnesota Tribune pointed out that I think it was a staffer, I think for Stephen Miller, was apparently tweeting back and forth with JD Vance, where JD Vance was saying to him, like, there are like 2 influencers in Florida that I want to arrest. And I'm pretty sure one of those was referring to me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. And I don't think I've said anything remotely illegal. So,
and nothing happened with this.
No, to my knowledge, no. I'm not even sure the second one would be referring to, but I guess stuff like that is stuff that I never would have thought I would have had to think about in the United States. Donald Trump suing you if you say something he doesn't like. He tried to sue that pollster in Iowa because he thought her poll was rigged. It's just unbelievably crazy wielding of weapons from the president of the United States.
Yeah, it seems from the outside, it's fascinating to see your approach, and because I do get very tainted media to my country. Sure. I'm just aware of that. I have a feeling that you are being a little bit biased just by your no criticism for the left. So I just want to see what are the concerns that you do have for the public itself as a whole, from the right and from the left, in the regards of self-destructiveness.
I have no criticism for that. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, like the issue is that like there are criticisms that I can make of the left, but the problem is there's no serious person on the other side to contend with. So, for instance, like you could argue that Biden could have done a better job with relation to the asylum-seeking problems we had at the border, right? But it's hard to say that because there was a bill that would have addressed a lot of these problems, and the Republicans were even going to support it, and then Donald Trump said, don't support that bill. I want to win my reelection. This is 100%, like Ted Cruz, like other people have said this publicly. This isn't even a conspiracy. It just happened. So even in the things that like the left has like kind of tried to address, like Republicans are happy to literally just torpedo it in the hopes that they have better electoral chances going forward. Like the frustrating thing is like we have a side of the country that does not want to govern. Like they have, like that's why we have no legislation. Nothing is happening with the Congress right now. They don't.
What do you mean? Don't want to govern?
They don't want to. They don't want to govern. They don't want to
make decisions.
Yeah, pass bills, do legislation, do anything with the country. They don't want to do anything. We couldn't even. We just shut down the government for the longest time period in all of U.S. history. The second longest one was under the first Trump term. It's just like they can't govern. They don't want to like do anything to rule the country. So like I am a solidly like center left person, and I'm a very big like capitalist, like markets oriented guy. I still believe in a lot of government intervention, but like as a result of that, like I have a lot of things that I would disagree with the left on. Like a federal high minimum wage is a thing I don't think is necessarily a good idea.
Healthcare,
like single payer healthcare, like the super top down. I don't think so. I'd be like good with the public option. The idea that like housing needs to be made free and that'll fix everything, like it's not a thing. Like there's a lot of these things I disagree with, but I have like I could fight with the left on it, but there's nobody on the right to even present a serious counteroffer. When it came to COVID, for instance, I think that there are good questions to ask about, like, what would be a better lockdown policy, or what's a way that we could have dealt with, rollouts for vaccines or schools or whatever, like better. Like I think there's a room to have that conversation. But I can't have that conversation with the right, because on the right, they're saying that it was part of the Great Reset and George Soros' plan to shut down the whole country so that Jews could bring in a bunch of, evil migrants that would take us over and force mRNA vaccines down our children's throats in order to kill everybody. There's no conversation to be had there. Yeah, that's the frustrating part. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that fascinates me the most about you is your defining of yourself as a left, as a liberal, as a Democrat. I feel like it makes you specific, but your opinions are more broad. I think it's like doing you a misjustice.
I understand why you say that, and even in the United States, I think there are people that would agree. But the reality is like I said, if you look in Congress, like my opinions are pretty mainstream, and if you look at the broader Democratic electorate, my opinions are pretty mainstream. But it's just when people think of the left in America, they think of like do you know who like Hassan Piker is?
Yeah, of course.
Or do you know who like all these online influencer type people? But like I said, like if you go back 15 years, or you go back 10 years, how old was Charlie Kirk? Was he like 31?
Yeah, 31, yeah. When
he started his Turning Point USA thing, okay, the idea was that college campuses were lost causes for conservatives. And, in about a decade, he built a massive electoral project. It was an insanely huge thing, chapters in every school. This guy was doing like 300 plus visits to campus a year. And it was a tremendous achievement. Like, look at people, like Hassan Piker. What has he done with his wealth to help his side politically? Nothing. These people have won 0 elections. They have no political power. Even Nick Fuentes is, he had his like America First PAC, where he was getting people like, he got like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, and another politician to show up and speak to all of his little groyper far right people. Like on the right, they're very much like concerned with and obsessed with political power. They want to win elections so that they can pass policy. And then when you go to these people on like the far left, they're very loud and they're very active on social media. They don't care if they win elections or not. They don't do anything to win elections. It's very frustrating. Yeah.
And what does it show you about the left?
About about those people on the far left, or
did you say that they can't move anything forward and they don't?
Because they don't care. They don't want to. That's not their goal. They don't care if they win elections or not. They just want the social capital. It feels good to complain about things.
Oh.
But on the right, it's not the same. Like on the far left, like I remember when I'm focusing a lot on Hassan because I hate this guy, but that when he was filling out his ballot on stream for who to vote for, he's like, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for president, guys, haha, because he didn't like the Democratic candidate. He didn't like Kamala Harris. On the right, in 2020, they said that the elections were all rigged and that the Democrats are bringing in even more illegal immigrants to rig, and they still go out and vote. That's the difference, is that every conspiracy they make, everything they say, at the end of the day, it's all about political power. It's all about like, we need to win office so that we can enact our political agenda.
So perhaps can you do a steel man for the point of view?
For which one?
For the right feeling the need to take so much political power.
I don't have to assume it. No, I think that's good. I think when you're playing politics, that's what you should be doing. The right is doing it correctly. Like there's this weird thing people say like on the left that they do like purity testing. Have you ever heard this term? Yeah. That like on the left, they always say like, oh, you're not allowed to be part of our movement because you're not gay enough or you don't like the right policies or whatever. But on the right, they accept everybody, That's not true in the United States. On the right, they do purity test, but they do it on one issue, and that's whether or not you're going to vote for the Republican candidate. As long as you do that, they don't care. But that's because they're trying to win elections. If you go into a room and you're a MAGA person and there's 10 people in there and you're a far-right MAGA online guy, you're looking at each of those 10 people and you're going to try to find one reason for why any of these people should support Trump. And that's all you care about because you just want to win elections and get power. If you're on the far left and you go into a room and there's 10 people here who are all, center left, you're going to try to find a reason for why every single one of those guys shouldn't support the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Holocaust terrorist or Genocide Joe. They didn't support the Palestinians enough. They don't support trans people enough. They don't support single-payer healthcare. They were mean to Bernie Sanders. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like what the these people. But the thing is too, it's like a Netanyahu Hamas situation. The Republicans like to spotlight the far left and say this is all the Democratic Party because then it makes the left people look really scary. So the Republicans will say that's the far left. Look at what they're doing. Look at all this horrible stuff. But the people they're pointing at, if you've ever seen me on Peers, I bring this up a million times.
Yeah.
When I complain about the far right, I'm talking about Donald Trump, J.D. Vance. I'm talking about Mike Johnson. I'm talking about Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh. These are huge media figures, mainstream media figures, Sean Hannity, Fox News, or they're huge politicians, the President of the United States. Why is it that when I complain about them, your question to me is always, well, hey, mate, what do you have to say about this guy?
Yeah,
and it's some random guy on fucking Twitter. Why do I care about this guy?
No, but I'll tell you why. Because this is the thing I think Piers Morgan presses you the most on, and the panel that he gets for your appearances is that it seems like you are not aware, perhaps, and maybe you should fix that in your message, dangers of the left.
I'm aware, I just don't care. Because I don't think that the danger... I've been told in my country for 20 years at least that I was promised communism after Obama, and then I was promised communism after Joe Biden. They kept saying, the Republicans would say, they're going to be communists, they're going to be socialists. Where nothing happened. Meanwhile, on Donald Trump, I have Donald Trump on Truth Social telling Pam Bondi, appoint Lindsay Halligan and go arrest James Comey, Letitia James, and Bolton. And she did it. She issued indictments. This is that one message alone is worse than anything I've seen in any U.S. president in my lifetime.
Yeah, but perhaps even a bigger issue is being able to see the other side, to see his perspective.
I see his perspective. His perspective, he's delusional because his side lies to him. But there's nothing else to say because when I asked the other side, I was like, "What?" There are so many common narratives that are just not true. I've seen this stupid fucking picture on Twitter so many times where you have a guy on the left, a guy on the right, and then a guy in the center, and then the left guy gets way, way, way more left, and now he's like right wing, and the guy's like, I didn't leave the left left me. Well, if I go back to 92 or whatever, Bill Clinton was president, okay? We went from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama to Joe Biden, okay? On the Republican side, we went from Bush Sr. to Donald fucking Trump. How is it that the left got more extreme? Donald Trump, these guys, all of the current MAGA hate all of the old Republicans. They shit on Reagan now. They hate all the neocons, all the Bush, the Iraq War, everything else. They hate all of these people, but they're like, oh, well, you guys changed so much. Joe Biden was literally Obama's vice president, and the Clintons are Hillary's still kind of hanging out back there. Like the Democratic Party has not shifted that far left at all, I don't think. So the issue I have is like people are like, oh, well, like don't you understand what they're concerned about? And it's like, I know what they're concerned about. They're concerned because they watch Fox News all day, and Fox News lies to them about everything that's happening.
Yeah, but they see the people, the figures that you mentioned, from getting from Clinton to Biden. And all in between is like puppets of other institutions that putting them there in order to make...
They see that, but they see that because Fox News tells them. But then when I ask for give me proof of any of this, there's never... This
is where I was going with stealing man their perspective, because this is, if you think that you have been your vote is not going to count and stuff like that because other shadow institutions are creating actually what's going on, you will be afraid and you will go only to vote for any figure that just comes, and then you get Donald Trump's perhaps.
Yeah, I understand, but it's because they've gone through a deliberate effort to lie about basically every single thing. They had 63 court cases. They lost all of them but one when it came to challenging voter stuff. They promised, Sidney Powell was out telling every American, we have the Kraken, we're going to come through and prove voter fraud. They didn't prove any of it. Donald Trump himself tried to rig the 2020 election when they had fake votes made up from 7 different states that they were going to try to get Mike Pence to count in Congress when he was choosing who was going to be the president.
Yeah, but what do you say to the suggestion that perhaps the figures from the Democratic Party that are becoming presidents are there as they get other influences from the outside.
Yeah, just show it then, prove it. Biden was a senator for like 40 years. Like, I don't think he's changed dramatically since he got into office on any of the stuff that he suggested. Like, what do we look at? Like, when we say, like, people just assert these things as like truisms. They say, oh, well, I think that this is the case, that this is it. It's like, okay, well, show me any evidence at all of that. Because meanwhile, for Donald Trump, like the Steve Witkoff guy, this guy's a fucking retard. This guy was on Tucker Carlson. He didn't even know the names of the regions that were being contested in Ukraine. And he's our special envoy now to Russia that's supposed to be negotiating these peace plans. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And this guy is like in business with Trump's family that didn't renounce any of their wealth or whatever, who are having these like massive investments from all these other countries. Donald Trump is running the largest crypto scam in the world right now. You can anonymously give money to the president of the United States of America through his crypto coin. There's like, I can point to thing after thing after thing after thing. Where it's like, this is just unbelievable. And then I ask the other side, okay, well, you guys are worried about all these secret influences. What are you worried about? Like, show me one thing, and there's nothing. It's just conspiracy after conspiracy, you know?
It is. I'm not sure, because perhaps I see in my country that it is going like this totally. And then people get confused and don't understand the big picture, and it is frustrating.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but if you say that there's no evidence,
yeah, like here's the difference, okay? And listen, if you ever have any mutual contacts, I will debate any single person in conservative media on any of these issues. But as soon as I started taking a harder stance on these, none of them wanted to talk.
Which ones?
Literally anybody.
Which stands?
Relating to the lawlessness of Donald Trump, the weaponization of the Department of Justice, the conspiracies that surround Trump, but they're all true. Like they just do everything out in the open. So ordering Pam Bondi to issue indictments against political opponents for no reason illegally, like this has all been done. Like a judge just ruled on this and tossed all these indictments yesterday. All the conspiracies surrounding them trying to rig the election on January 6th, it was all just done out in the open. We've seen all of that. We've got testimony from 100 different people over this. Like you can argue and fight on all these things on the conservative side, and it's just open. But their excuse for all of it is they don't say like, okay, that didn't happen. They'll say, well, the Democrats did it first. It's like, well, show me. Like, and there's just no evidence on the other side for the Democrats doing any of this stuff. You just can't see it anywhere. So it's like, it's very frustrating. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If anyone who listens has evidence, I would love to see it as well. And going to January 6th that you mentioned, I was going to ask you about it, because do you think that this is the best, way of seeing the thing that you're afraid of Trump being so influential on these
of course.
masses? Yeah. This is it.
It would be the worst, I think, of all the actions he's ever done, for sure.
How come? Can you please elaborate?
Because he literally tried to rig the election, and then he tried to use force to basically threaten everybody in Congress into going along with his attempt to rig it.
Wait, so the first thing that everybody will say against it to you, and I've seen it many times, is that he was trying to be peaceful. He was trying to be, not encourage violence and stuff like that.
Why did all the people go to the Capitol and be violent? So was that just an accident?
No, you say it was direct influence by Trump.
Yeah.
So can you please just show me to me?
Well, everybody was there because he called them all to be there on January 6th. So that's the first thing. So the only reason they were there was because January 6th was the day that Congress was supposed to be counting the votes from the states. Yeah. So he called them there to protest what? To protest the counting of the vote. That's all they could protest them. He already lost the election. There was nothing else to protest. So he brought them there to protest the vote. While they were there, he continued to reiterate all of the same claims that he'd made over the past year that were all debunked to him personally by every person in his administration, that the vote was rigged, that these states had rigged them, that nobody had cooperated, nobody had helped with the investigating, that all the judges were rigged. He said that you have to fight like hell, you're going to lose your country, that they're trying to steal your country from you, that we're going to go to the Capitol and we're going to give these congressmen the courage they need to do the right thing, which was to rig the election for him, was to vote for him to win.
Yeah. Can you explain it further? Just do you think that he wasn't the election? He had no evidence or anything that for being rigged.
Correct.
And the thing
and the evidence that he was presenting was a lie, and he knew that. So, for instance, there's a very famous video. You can go on there's a website. It's not YouTube. It's the other one. You can watch all the videos in hour-long form.
Rumble?
No. It's a weird one.
Okay.
I'll remember it later. But there's videos of the State Farm Arena in Georgia. One of the most popular conspiracies were these black boxes that were pulled out from under the table that were mysterious votes that were brought in, right? When you watch Trump's legal counsel presenting this evidence, she watches this video and then she tells them to skip ahead to 10 minutes, and then they pull these mysterious boxes out and they start counting ballots again. If you go and find the original videos, which are online, I think I'm even hosting them right now, you can find these original videos. What happens is the people are counting the ballots and then they're supposed to go home because it's the end of the day. They put the extra ballot or the ballots they hadn't counted yet, they put them in these boxes and then they put them under the table. And then they get the call like, hey, we want to continue to count so we can get this, done faster. They pull those same boxes out from under the table, they put them on and they count them again. They weren't there. They weren't brought in at the beginning of the day. They weren't snuck in. They weren't mysterious. That's where they were. But when they showed that evidence, they purposefully fast-forwarded for when the boxes were put under the table. Giuliani was sued by two of the ladies that he made the strongest claims against in that thing. I think it was Ruby Moss and Shay Freeman. And his defense was that he had a First Amendment right to lie. And he lost both those cases. They sued him for defamation. You're lying about us rigging this election and doing all this stuff. That's one of a million different examples of so he knew he was lying on January 6th. He knew he was lying.
And how do you explain that act?
Because he wanted the Congress to vote to keep him in, even though he lost the election.
He wanted to win, even though he lost.
Yes. And this gets into weird stuff, and even most Americans don't understand this, but like in the United States of America, we citizens don't vote for president. We don't have any say in who the president is. The voters for the president are the states. Each of our states have electors who vote for the president. Now, it just so happens, because this is how we just do it, all the states say, whoever our population vote for, all of our electors are going to go and vote for president. That's what we're going to do. So if your state, 51% of the people or more all vote for the Democrat, then your electors fill out their certificate saying, we're going to put our votes in for the Democrat, and then you mail that to the Capitol, to NAR, whatever, to Congress, and then they open that and they read it and say, okay, well, Delaware, Connecticut, Florida, you guys have voted. They read it like that. What Donald Trump did, and again, this is all out in the open, is there were 7 contested states, the battleground states, where what he did was he told the Republican electors in those states, just fill out your thing, like you guys are going to vote, and then you guys send yours into a different address, and we're going to give those to Pence so that when he's counting the final votes, instead of counting the real electors, he's going to count our electors. And these certificates exist online. You can see all 7 of these with the fake, they're not real, they're not the real results, but it's the electors that filled them out and said, oh yeah, okay, yeah, the Republicans are voting in these states. And that was his goal. That's what he was sending everybody there to do, was to pressure Congress to count the illegal electors, which would have given Trump the win. That was the plan that was outlined by them.
Oh yeah, and you said you said before that you are not scared of or concerned about him doing something like this again.
Only because of his age. He's too old now, I think. I don't know if he'll make it through his presidency. I think he's looking very rough, especially if you look at him now compared to like 10 years ago. He's gotten much older.
Yeah. This is the thing, representative of every president of the U.S. Yeah,
it's harder with Trump though, because he's always been such an idiot. It's harder to see the decline, I think. Because I'll ask conservatives that. I'll be like, do you think that Trump is mentally incompetent? How would you even tell? And most people say it's be very hard because he repeats the same stuff over and over again anyway. He always gets stuff wrong. He doesn't know much about anything. So it's hard to tell when he's actually losing his mind because...
Yeah. Can you take me back to the day he won this time and think about what made the climate such as it could happen?
I think the biggest factor was probably just inflation. It's just a thing that everybody can see so well, and you can feel it pretty hardcore. And we had a huge bout of it after COVID, and then after the Russia-Ukraine war started. I think a lot of people, really around the entire world, were voting heavily on how inflation was impacting them. And then there's also the Republicans are good at media and everything else, like that. They have always had that, on lock and everything. Yeah. And then on our side, the Biden-Kamala switch was hard for us, and yeah.
Hard for you. Yeah. It's still. Shocks me that you are speaking in an us manner. It seems to me like it's too similar to be this divided. From the outside, this is how it seems.
What's too similar?
Everyone in this country, you have the same problems and life goals and everything like that as just your neighbor who is voting for Trump.
Oh, sure. But it's like that everywhere, right?
I'm not sure.
Well, I absolutely is. Because when I was in Israel, it was just funny seeing like Israelis and or like Jewish people and Arabs living like in Israel. There's like 2 million Arabs, and you see them all. And as an American, maybe I'm face retarded. Like it all looks kind of the same to me. And it's funny that like every single house I go into, like you guys drink way too much coffee.
Yeah.
Everything like fairly similar compared to like I almost feel like culturally, I think I can say this. I feel like Jewish people are more similar to Arab people in Israel than like Jewish people and like Jews in Brooklyn would be to each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's quite different. Maybe not. Maybe like in the most.
Maybe you've seen
maybe in the nicest parts of Tel Aviv. Maybe they're like your Brooklyn Jews or whatever. But like you go to like Jerusalem or whatever. I feel like the people there are very. I feel like I'm in a different country, kind of, right?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
What is this representing?
Just saying that, like, it's funny because I'm sure in the U.S., you would view us as having similar problems, but then when you come to the U.S., we see each other sometimes as like totally different, you know?
Yeah.
Or even when it comes to like racial stuff, like our neo-Nazis here, when they talk about, you know, we have to protect white people, like in the United States, we're very bad at like ethnicity and race. Like to us, like, you know, Russian, German, Swede, like Anglo-Saxon, like all of these are just white people to us. French people, they're all like white. Yeah. But like you go to like Europe, I remember my ex-wife was Swedish, and like she could see somebody and be like, that guy's like, that's a Balkan guy. Like this guy's from, you know, whatever. This guy's probably Southern Europe, like Spain, France. Like, oh, I have no idea. I don't know. It's all white people to me. Yeah. So we all have our different.
Yeah, things, it is like that in Israel. Yeah, I can totally see this one or another. On this huge influencers like podcasts and big media figures like you mentioned, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and Peterson and Joe Rogan and all those figures. The role that they had on the past election.
I mean, I would say it's been really disappointing, really bad. There was this kind of like fantasy of podcasts like 20 years ago that when podcasts would start, rather than getting these like 2-minute news clips, you could have like in-depth conversations about things. And rather than having like in-depth conversations where you're exploring topics with subject matter experts and you really get into it, it just became like those 2-minute blurbs, but for like 3 hours. And then it just became like idiots rambling about things for hours and hours that were just like super brainwashing and just the dumbest stuff I've ever heard. And it's very, very, very frustrating.
You do believe this is the case? It's not.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure you've watched like fucking like Dave Smith on Joe Rogan and wanted to kill yourself for 3 hours. Like, so like seeing, it's just very disappointing seeing like. It could be so much better. Yeah. But the issue is that there's a fundamental problem. I don't know if it's just Americans or all humans have this issue. Humans think that if you put them in an environment that they're always going to try to find the things that are true, but it's not. We try to find the things that make us feel good. And to find things
that we already know to be true.
Kind of, yeah. But usually because they make us feel good, because it makes us safe, right? You don't have to challenge anything about yourself. And as long as people have that fundamental assumption that they're always seeking what's true and not what makes them feel good, they're not going to practice seeking what's true. So if you're not practicing that because you think you automatically do it, and you're sitting in front of some computer screen that has some algorithm that's automatically feeding you headlines, well, you're always just going to be, brainwashed. And then if you're on the other end of that, you're producing content and media, well, you're just producing it for the people that are consuming stuff to make them feel good. So you're going to tell them what makes them feel good because that's where all the money is.
Yeah, but do you refer to it like an echo chamber? Like
I mean, yeah, in a way, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, okay. So is there a difference between the way that the left and the right consume media and the news?
I mean, I think fundamentally we're all kind of human, but I think that the
no,
right...
not as a human. I mean,
I mean, I'm saying like we all have the same issues, but I think the right is a lot further along the kind of the conspiratorial thing. There's a saying of like evil always overplays its hand, which I think is kind of true right now of the Trump administration, that they could have been so much more effective if they just weren't so crazy. Like when I look at conservative media, I feel like they're constantly making deals with the devil. And it's
in what way?
A deal with it, as in like you're willing to, like, this guy who seems like a unscrupulous guy, like a bad guy is coming in, but he's offering to help you with something, and it's like, okay, I'll let this guy help for a little bit, but it's probably going to come back to bite you in the ass. So like Ben Shapiro right now is feeling that finally, as he's now running around crying, saying all the same things that I said to him a couple of years ago about how crazy their movement is, because now he's like, hey guys, there's like a whole bunch of like crazy anti-Semitic far right people that are coming up, and now everybody on the right is just kind of like laughing at him and making fun of him. And it's like, well, I mean, this was the deal that you made when you said you were willing to accept anybody as long as they were willing to support Trump, and you didn't want to look at any of these more extreme elements of your movement, because people will say, well, the left has these radicals, these extremists, whatever. They don't vote. They don't care. On the right, these people support like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Like these are supposed to be the evangelical Christians are supporting like gambling, sex trafficking, rape, whatever guys, like they'll support anybody.
Can you just elaborate on the thing you said about Ben Shapiro that you claimed to him before, and now he's
my issue with Ben was that like there have to be some standards. We have to play within something where we're having some mutual respect for both sides. And Donald Trump completely abdicated that when he tried to overturn the election. And Ben Shapiro's response to me was one of the most absurd things I've ever heard from a smart person in my entire life. His response was, well, the guardrails held, so it's okay to try it again, which is just, that's such an unbelievable statement to me.
First of all, this is an interesting claim that you said that it was the most absurd thing that a smart person ever told you.
Because he's smarter than this. I know he is. To say the guardrails held, you would never say this.
Can you explain this?
Basically that Donald Trump tried to overthrow the election in 2020. It was unacceptable.
What is Ben's...
he's saying that, like, well, he didn't succeed, right? So we were okay. But you would never make that type of exchange with anybody else. You would never say that type of thing with anybody else. Like, oh, my daughter's going to go out with this guy and he tried to, kidnap and kill her last time, but she fought him off. So it's okay. So she can go out with him again. It's like, you'd never say this in anything ever.
Yeah.
Or even if you were talking about actual guardrails, if a car was like constantly crashing into the guardrails, you wouldn't say, like, oh, it's okay for the car to keep crashing because the guardrails are holding. But now, as he's starting to get swallowed by his movement that are becoming a little bit more far right in a bad way, now he's like, wait, guys, hold on. Maybe we need to stop for a moment and really think about where we're going. It's like, bro, you're way too far down that road to turn back the car now.
Oh, this is fascinating. So because they allowed everybody into the mega movement or the right, the conservative movement, when they were supportive of Trump, you say that this opened the gate to many, many other agendas that now don't fit the narrative that he wants.
That Ben Shapiro would want, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that, like, I don't, like, people will disagree with me, but I don't think that, like, crazy anti-Semitism has been, like, a huge part of the American conservative movement. It's kind of been a little bit under the surface, but not, like, a huge part. But do you know QAnon?
I've heard this term before.
Just like weird conspiracy stuff in like 2015, 16. But like a lot of this had like weird kind of like Jews controlling everything.
Oh.
There were like these wildfires that started in Hawaii. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene thought that like Jews controlled space lasers that were shooting stuff to start fires. The weird Jew controlling everything. For the vaccines, when they came out, people were like, COVID was programmed not to attack Jewish blood or whatever. There's just like a lot of weird shit. But like QAnon was kind of a big-ish part of like the early MAGA movement, and they were always kind of there, and you had these like QAnon-ish like politicians, like your Marjorie Taylor Greenes, they were kind of like coming up, and the Republican Party did nothing. They will never attack their own side. They will never attack their own side as long as you support the candidate. And yeah, you're starting to see that collecting interest now, I guess, and Ben Shapiro's like, I don't like this, but it's what are you going to do?
Yeah, he's getting the fire of you are not really U.S. first, you are in Israel first, and
the dual citizen loyalty. Candace Owens split, and she's crazy, and yeah. This
is a fascinating situation over there that's happening, and I'm really paying attention to it because it seems crazy from the side. But it leading to the thing that I said that I needed you other thing to clarify. You said that there's no such thing in the universities or stuff like that with the youth that is becoming radicalized into communist agendas, stuff like that. Is it correct?
I mean, I think they kind of are, but I think what people lose track of is back in the past, like we were very in different areas and different ages, right? Like school kids were at school, college kids were in college, workers are at work, right? We were kind of like all segregated into our own spaces. Nowadays, if you go onto Twitter or you go onto X or some social media platform, you can see the president of the United States say something, and then the next thing might be the head of, like a university, and then it might be my tweet, and then it might be some 16-year-old kid, and then it might be some massive YouTuber, and then it might be, right? Now it's all like seen as like the same, so we evaluate it as such. The thing that I always say to people is like college kids are always radical. They always have been radical. Everybody's radical in college. I'm sure you were radical. I was a crazy libertarian, Ron Paul, like everybody, like that's just what you are. You're 18.
I was in the military, so it's different.
Okay. But like everybody's just like you don't have any life experience, you haven't had a job, you haven't had any real problems, like largely speak compared to most people. So like you go to college, you're kind of crazy, but like as you grow up, you get a job, like it goes away.
So you say it's not a thing to be concerned about?
No, I think most people grow out of a lot of it. Yeah,
really?
And you can see that even in like the millennial age, like a lot of my generation, people were saying things, and now I see people saying the same things about the next generation, or like crazy, lazy, horrible kid. And it's like everybody said the same about the other generation, and you grow up, and I think for the most part, people grow out of it. Yeah.
And the thing I needed to clarify is because you mentioned in regards to Charlie Kirk and the Turning Point USA, which he did in this narrative that the campuses are becoming too radicalized, and you need to save the conservative narratives inside the universities. You think that it's not an issue and it never been, or it's
So I
changed
think-
now?
I think
because
that
of-
Charlie Kirk stuff was scarier to me because the difference is that the radicalized college kids were just radicalized college kids that had whatever crazy ideas they had. But again, I will stress this, and I would fight anybody on this topic. Over the last 10 to 15 years, where have the communists and socialists won electorally? You cannot find it. They do not exist on the electoral map in the United States. But conservatives vote. They really care about voting. And if Charlie Kirk was able to gain a huge foothold in college campuses and get those people more politically plugged in, I'm not really as worried about them just being radical on the right or whatever. What's going to happen is they're probably going to vote more because they care about voting. The right really cares about voting. And that would be, I say scary, but like on the right, they should do that. This is politically, this is what they should be doing. But on like the far left, like these, they don't vote.
and they don't do anything harmful to society or stuff.
I mean, you can argue they do. Yeah, they can be. I think that like the center left messaging can get co-opted by them a little bit. Like the whole BLM riots was probably not great. Although a lot of that I think was also people were stuck at home from COVID, so that was crazy. I mean, I'm not gonna say they're not harmful. Like there's definitely harmful aspects of it. We should fight it. Like when a kid is being crazy, you should tell the kid you're being kind of crazy or whatever. Like I think it's totally fine. But like I'm tired of people on the right saying like this is a huge problem. Like if these kids are allowed to grow up and be like this, like it's going to destroy our country. And it's like, okay, well you're destroying my country right now, and you're already all grown up. So like, yeah. So we have a big difference of like priorities here, you know. Yeah.
Well, and you don't think that like the way that they didn't condemn or like they celebrated Charlie's death, you think that's not a sign of any?
I mean, it's not great, and I don't think you should be celebrating political rivals' deaths, but like. I have a very blunt personality, okay, in real life, okay? I just have a certain type of personality. There are certain people that I meet, that I've engaged with, that are never going to like me. But I accept that, okay? I have a certain personality, and I know that some people are going to like me, and I accept that. If I got assassinated at an event, half the internet is going to be memeing about it and joking about it because I'm an asshole or whatever. And, you know, I'm an asshole. That's like that's kind of my personality. Like I wouldn't, you know, from heaven or hell or whatever, be like, I can't believe you guys are fucking making fun of me. When I went to fucking Israel, I was petrified that some crazy IDF dude was going to fucking kill me. And then all the pro-Palestinian people would celebrate me getting killed. Or some crazy Palestinian was going to blow me up. And some fucking crazy Zionist guy was going to be like, yeah, I told you they were all right. Because I was like, fuck me. It would suck. But the Republican Party over the past 10 years has built itself on reveling in owning the left. And like you have Alligator Alcatraz built in Florida for the illegal immigrants. You've got Kristi Noem is taking videos with illegal immigrants behind her in cages. When you build your movement on that much vitriol and hatred and spite, it shouldn't be that surprising when, like, if you get, somebody gets shot and killed, where people are like making fun of you. Like, I feel like you're building yourself up to be this larger than life evil caricature of a person. Like, yeah, people are probably going to feel a lot more strongly about something happening to you.
Yeah, no, this is totally the case. I see what you're saying, but I didn't think that the celebration was making fun of him. I thought it was like celebrating the right action in a moral circumstance.
I think it was mostly making fun of him,
really?
Especially because like the last thing he's talking about was like gang violence, and then he gets killed by a white dude who's 22 years old, and then you've got like all the other statements he's made in the past and everything else, and like I think I'm sure there might have been some people saying it was like morally right, but like keep in mind that all the people saying this too are like these are like young or influencer type people. On the left, like on the lawmaker side, on the elected politician side, the leadership was unified in condemnation.
Yeah,
everybody said it was not good. Yeah,
this is a good argument that you're making.
But I'll also say real quick, also on the right,
yeah.
And that this wasn't just normal people. This was also elected lawmakers. When Nancy Pelosi's husband got attacked at her house by a crazy dude who showed up with a fucking hammer, people on the right, Mike Lee, senator, people are making fun of this. Donald Trump was making fun of this. So it's like, I have no sympathy. Like for you to hold up not you, but for like a conservative to hold up like my senators and my president can make fun of crazy violent shit that happens to you guys. And then when they look around and like, I can't believe these college kids are making jokes. It's like, well, what the fuck, man? Like this is my eternal fight on Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
Every time I'm brought in to start a fight with this point. Yeah.
You mentioned that you've been given threats or some kind of, how real did it ever got?
I don't know. I think maybe because I haven't gotten attacked yet, maybe I just don't think about it much, but it just doesn't, I don't think about it much. I've gotten death threats for the past 15 years. So
yeah,
it's gotten a lot worse over the past year or two, but I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. How do you explain it?
Probably, well, I mean, after the first Trump assassination attempt, like the rhetoric in the country got way more heated.
Oh.
And then I made a lot of statements that are like very heated. So people get like very mad about everything. Yeah.
But are those death threats real in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, most of them, I mean, obviously not. Nobody's killed me yet, so.
Yeah, but are there, maybe it's in order to silence you or something like that.
I think people just get mad and they think that if they, send you your address or if they, attack you and say they're going to kill you or rape you, that
So it never gotten any more than just comments and stuff like that.
No, just usually a lot of messages and stuff.
Messages, so yeah. In Israel, I had this incident a few months ago, and yeah, this is really tough, and I sympathize with you on this matter.